Hello. Today's presentation focuses on U.S. soybeans market, its main demand and supply drivers. I begin with an overview of soybeans world and U.S. markets. Soybeans originated in Asia and is one of the 6 primary crops grown around the world. These 6 crops are sugarcane, corn, rice, wheat, potatoes, and soybeans. They comprise almost 60% of all world crop production. Portion of U.S. soybean production gets exported, and the rest is crushed to make meal and oil, which also get exported. The typical assumption is that a 60-pound bushel of soybeans yields 48 pounds of high-protein soybean meal, 11 pounds of soybean oil, and 1 pound of processing waste. Soybean meal goes to feed animals and make soy products for human consumption. Soybean oil is used in food, biofuels, and is also exported. Global soybeans production was around 370 million metric tons in 2021-22 marketing year. For soybeans, marketing year spans September 1st through August 31st. The largest producers of soybeans in the world are Brazil, United States, and Argentina. They produced 82% of world soybeans in 2020-21. As mentioned earlier, soybeans are crushed and then consumed as soy meal and soybean oil. Worldwide, soy meal and soybean oil consumption has been growing over time. The top 5 soy meal consumers are China, United States, European Union, Brazil, and Mexico. And the top 5 soybean oil consumers are China, United States, Brazil, India, and European Union. Majority of soybean products are being exported as soybeans. 50% of exports are from Brazil. U.S. is the second largest exporter, accounting for 37%. As for the soy meal and soybean oil, the main exporters are Argentina and Brazil. The largest importer of soybeans is China, which accounts for 60% of soybeans world imports. EU, Indonesia, and Vietnam import 42% of soybean meal, and India and China import 38% of soybean oil. Moving on to U.S. soybeans market. In 2021, U.S. produced about 4.4 billion bushels of soybeans, or 121,000 metric tons. Soybeans, like corn, are grown in the Heartland region. In 2021, 62% of soybeans were grown in Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, Missouri, Ohio, and South Dakota. Illinois and Iowa are the largest soybeans producing states, comprising about 29%. Next, we discuss soybeans' major uses. About half of the soybeans produced in U.S. are crushed to make soybean meal and oil, and the other half is exported. Soy meal is used to feed animals and for exports. 98% of U.S. soy meal consumption goes to animal feed, with the remainder used in human food, such as tofu, tempeh, soy milk, and yogurt. Soybean oil is used in food, biofuels, and is also exported. Soybean oil has been the primary feedstock in making biodiesel in U.S. Graph on this slide shows how the price of soybeans changed over time, both in nominal and real dollars. In nominal terms, the price of soybeans fluctuated in the $4 to $8 per bushel range between 1980 and 2006. The prices have been higher and more volatile from 2007 to 2021. In real terms, soybeans have become cheaper over time. This is a similar pattern to corn prices. When trying to estimate how the prices of soybeans will behave, one needs to analyze the factors that affect its demand and supply. An equilibrium market price is determined by an intersection of demand and supply curves. The price can change when demand or supply curve move in or out. The components of soybean supply are beginning stocks, production, and imports, with the production being the largest component. Beginning stocks are what is carried over from the previous year. Production is determined by the amount of acreage harvested and the yield per acre. U.S. hardly imports any soybeans. In 2020-21 marketing year, U.S. imported only 0.3% of its total U.S. supply. Now demand for soybeans comes from crushing them into meal and oil, exports, seed, other residual use, and ending stocks. U.S. domestic soybean use grew 2% on average during 1980-2021. Given that the soybeans are processed to be consumed as a meal and oil, corresponding demand equations for each subproduct are shown. Supply equations are the same as for soybeans. Table summarizes the main demand and supply effects on soybean prices. On the demand side, we have demand for animal products, prices of substitutes like feed grains, international trade for exported soybeans, renewable energy government mandates, and consumer preferences. On the supply side, we have government price support and subsidies, diseases and weather that affect the yields, and technological advances like genetically engineered seeds. I describe each of these factors next. The first demand factor I will discuss is demand for animal products. Since most soybean meal is used to feed animals, demand for animal products, such as meat and poultry, can increase demand for the animal feed. Graph on the left shows that U.S. consumption of red meat and poultry has been growing at an average annual rate of 1.3% during 1980-2021. This growth is closely related to the population growth of 0.9% during the same time period. We can see that up to 2007, consumption of meat and poultry was following the trend in population growth. But in 2008, this trend changed. This decline was driven in part by higher exports of meat and poultry and higher feed costs of soybean meal and corn because of an increase in demand for biofuels such as ethanol and biodiesel. The most important soybean meal substitute is corn. Because both corn and soybeans are the primary animal feed grains, a change in the price of corn will have an impact on demand for soybean meal. Graph shows average prices for corn and soybeans received by the farmers for the period 1980-2021. We can see that both prices have almost the same trend. The correlation coefficient is 0.95. On average, corn prices grew 3%, whereas soybean prices grew 2.5%. The correlation coefficient of price changes is 0.76. For example, an increase in the price of soybeans during the period 2006-2008 was driven by an increase in the price of corn, as demand for ethanol increased dramatically and soybeans demand increased as a substitute feed. In 2007, farmers planted more corn and less soybeans as corn became more profitable because of ethanol, which drove soybean prices even higher. U.S. exports large amounts of soybeans, soybean meal, and soybean oil. In 2020-21, U.S. exported 65% of its soybean production. Countries that one needs to pay attention to are Brazil and Argentina as the main competitors, and China as the main importer. Depreciation of U.S. dollar relative to an importing country and its export competitor countries makes U.S. soybeans relatively cheaper, and therefore we can expect higher exports. Whereas appreciation of U.S. dollar will make U.S. soybeans relatively more expensive, and we can expect a decline in export demand. Now, let's talk about U.S. trade war with China and how export demand was affected by the retaliatory tariffs. In 2018, U.S. imposed tariffs on imports of solar panels, washing machines, aluminum, and steel from selected trading countries, including China. In response, many countries, including China, imposed a tariff on some products. Soybeans was one of the affected commodities. Chart on the right shows how U.S. soybean exports to China declined in 2018 to 2020. Tariffs made U.S. soybeans more expensive. China switched to Brazilian soybeans to meet its demand. The rebound in exports to China in 2020-21 was due to an increased feed demand by China and delayed soybean harvest in Brazil in 2021. China ran out of Brazilian soybeans to meet its demand and had to start buying U.S. soybeans. Similarly to corn, renewable fuel standards increased demand for soybean oil. During the last 20 years, the amount of soybean oil converted into biodiesel as a share of all U.S. soybean production is estimated to have increased from 0.5% in 2001-2002 to 35% in 2020-21. This increase has been driven by Renewable Fuel Standards, a federal program that requires transportation fuel sold in the U.S. to contain a minimal volume of renewable fuels. The Renewable Fuel Standards originated with the Energy Policy Act of 2005 and were expanded and extended by the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007. In addition, government provides tax credits to incentivize biodiesel blenders and producers, such as biodiesel mixture excise tax credit and biodiesel income tax credit. Biodiesel is the second most used and produced biofuel in the United States after ethanol. It is made from vegetable oils and animal fats. Soybean oil is the primary input into biodiesel in the U.S. In 2020, it represented 72% of all inputs used to make biodiesel. B20, 20% biodiesel, and 80% petroleum diesel is the common biodiesel blend in U.S. For vehicles manufactured after 1993, B20 can be used in diesel engines with no need for equipment modifications and exhibits a similar operating performance. The good news for the environment is that B20 has been shown to significantly reduce air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. The last demand driver I will talk about is consumer preferences. Just Google, "Is soy bad for your health?" and you will get the conflicting advice stemming from everyone on the internet, from an American Cancer Society to a lifestyle blogger. There have been numerous studies about health effects of soy on both animals and humans. This news can potentially affect demand for soy products. I've been interested myself in the studies about how soy consumption in infants and kids affects their puberty and reproductive systems. Why would there be a link between soy and health issues? Estrogen. Soy contains isoflavones, an estrogen-like compound, which can lead to hormonal changes and subsequent health changes throughout life. Agent studied infants fed soy formula in Philadelphia hospitals during the period August 2010-March 2014. They found a response in tissue and organ development consistent with an exogenous estrogen exposure in girls fed soy formula as compared to the girls fed cow milk formula. They suggested to continue evaluating the effects of soy on child development. Oliveira did not find any association between a soy-based infant diet and the onset of puberty in girls or boys after reviewing 8 published studies in which 598 children consumed a soy-based diet and 2,957 did not. Doctor in Seattle Children's Hospital found a high soy consumption in infants and young children could lead to an increased risk of Kawasaki disease. To sum up, more research needs to be done to determine the link between soy products and health effects. Moving on to the supply side drivers now. Soybeans area planted and harvested has been increasing over time. Two notable decreases in plantings in the last 2 decades occurred in 2008 and 2019. In 2008, soybean plantings decreased as farmers planted more corn due to increased demand for ethanol, which made corn a more profitable commodity. In 2019, soybeans plantings decreased due to reduced demand and record inventories as a result of retaliatory tariffs by China. When deciding how much soybeans to plant, the producer compares its profitability with other competing crops, like wheat or corn. It is common to rotate corn crops with soybeans for agronomic reasons. Planted acreage is also influenced by government policies. Historically, U.S. government has supported farmers' incomes through commodity price support, storage programs, and direct payments. The Farm Bill, a multi-year legislation, governs an array of agricultural and food programs. Current is 2018 Farm Bill. Similar to corn, the soybean producers have access to price loss coverage, agricultural risk coverage, and marketing assistance loan programs. In addition, the government can implement other support payments to the farmers. For example, Market Facilitation Program provided aid to assist the farmers hurt by the trade disruptions when China implemented a tariff on U.S. soybeans and other goods in 2018. PLC and ARC are subsidies that farmers can receive to offset lower revenues if commodity prices are lower than what was expected. Producers can only choose to participate in either PLC or ARC. PLC offers protection against a decline in a crop price, whereas ARC in a crop revenue. Farmers can also participate in Marketing Assistance Loan Program, which has been running since 1930s. MAL provides both a floor price and interim financing for certain commodities, which includes soybeans. The MAL offers producers short-term loans during harvest time, when market prices tend to be the lowest, allowing them to delay the sale of the commodity until market conditions improve. Farmers can receive a 9-month loan from the government by pledging some of their harvested crop as a collateral. For each bushel put under a loan, the producer receives a payment equal to that year's loan rate. Under MAL program, the producer must keep the crop designated as loan collateral in approved storage to preserve crop's quality. The loan can be repaid at any time during the 9-month period. If local market soybean prices were above the loan rate plus interest, a farmer would repay the loan and reclaim the crop. If market prices remain below the loan rate, then producers can either forfeit the crop, repay the loan at a lower rate, or take a loan deficiency payment in lieu of MAL. Figure shows that in the last 40 years, the loan rate has been below the market price, except during 1998-2000. Weather and soybean diseases impact yields. Soybean diseases negatively impact yields and quality of soybeans. Banderas studied economic impacts of 23 common soybean diseases in 28 soybean-producing states during a period 1996-2016. They found soybean cyst nematode and charcoal rot to be the most damaging diseases, accounting for about 33% of total U.S. economic losses stemming from all types of soybean diseases. In addition, in their analysis, the soybean cyst nematode caused twice as much yield loss than any other soybean disease. Losses are 5.54 times higher in northern states than in southern states, 85% versus 15%. Soybean cyst nematodes are microscopic roundworms that infect the roots of soybeans and other plants, leading to a stunted growth and nutrient deficiency. Using data from Allen, in 2014 losses from soybean diseases amounted to about 12.6% or almost 5 billion of total soybean production. Weather is another variable that affects crop yields. The graph shows soybean yields over time. Hot and dry conditions during the growing season have the worst impact on yields. Lower yields mean lower production, shifting supply curve to the left, raising the prices, and reducing quantities demanded. Climate change means droughts and hotter temperatures will become a norm, and farmers will have to adjust to the changing conditions. The last supply driver I will discuss are technological advancements. Genetically engineered seeds were commercially introduced in the US in 1996. GE seeds are attractive to a farmer because they allow to control weeds and pests in a more cost-effective way, less time and money, while growing the crops. When a plant does not need to compete with weeds and pests for soil nutrients, its yield would increase. Herbicide-tolerant or HT seeds allow farmers to better control weeds. A farmer can use herbicides to kill weeds but not damage HT crops. This way, no tilling the soil needed, which is very labor-intensive. Graph on the right shows adoption of HT soybean seeds in US since 1996. Percent of GE soybeans planted increased from 7.4% in 1996 to 94% in 2020. In the US, 3 major organizations oversee safety of GMO foods for humans, animals, and the environment. They are US Food and Drug Administration, US Environmental Protection Agency, and US Department of Agriculture. All major health organizations such as WHO, FDA, concur that GMO foods do not adversely affect human and animal health. I would like to conclude this presentation with a short discussion about soybean price and stocks-to-use ratio relationship. Stocks-to-use ratio is calculated by dividing the ending stocks by total use. Total soybean use comes from amount crushed to make meal and oil, planted and exported, plus other residual uses. Ending stocks is defined as what is left from total soybean supply for the year after subtracting total soybean use. Changes in ending stocks are inversely related to price. If total use rises relative to supply, ending stocks decline and price increases, and vice versa. Graph presents a scatter plot of average farm price versus stocks-to-use ratio for soybeans. As expected, lower stocks-to-use ratios are associated with higher prices, whereas increase in stocks-to-use ratio leads to lower prices. Since corn market is an important driver for the soybeans market, I split data into 2 subsamples, 1980-2006 and 2007-2021. Like corn, the relationship between soybeans price and stocks-to-use ratio has changed after 2007. 2007 marks the beginning of an ethanol boom and a smaller boom for soybeans, even though soybeans are not as widely used in making biofuels as corn. We can see that the price response to a change in stocks-to-use ratio is much greater after 2007. Thank you for listening and hope you watch my other commodities basics videos.